Good evening. Good evening. I think I'm going to talk about something that was on my mind about what happens to you when a doctor hands you a death sentence, which happened to me more than once. Because I thought about that many people think I don't need God. That doesn't have anything to do with me. That's not real for me. I don't need that. And I thought so too, but maybe life will put you in a situation where you can't help yourself anymore, and you may be not able to imagine that you could ever be in a situation where you cannot help yourself anymore, where you just throw your hands in the air and say, I don't know what to do. I tried everything many times. I don't know what to do. I am completely out of my depth. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to, from now on, I'm going to be reacting and hoping for the best. I don't know what to do. If that's hard to believe for you, then just imagine. I'm going to explain to you what happens to you physically when a doctor tells you, for example, you have hepatitis C. Back then, there were no antivirals against hepatitis C. Did not exist. The only thing that you could do against hepatitis C was interferon, which is terrifying, has extreme side effects like high fever. And most of my friends had to do interferon. I was the first that got the antivirals, maybe one of the first few people in Austria. Seriously. So when I was in rehab for the 456th time, I had my blood work checked. If just imagine that happening to you, because nobody believes that this can happen to them. To me, that will never happen to me. But just imagine, did this happen to me? This really happened to me. So the doctor comes in the room. He talks his usual blah 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 like every morning. And I'm already basically leaving his office, and he looks through the papers and says, oh yeah, and by the way, you have hepatitis C. And I was like, I had my hand was already on the door knob, and the door was already half opened, and I was looking back at him, and I said, okay, thank you, and I closed the door behind me. Back then, people in rehab, and I didn't know better, I was very, very young, said things like, nowadays I would rather I have AIDS than hepatitis C. Many people said that. Literally, that's a quote from the people that were with me in rehab. Nowadays, I'd rather have AIDS than hepatitis C. First of all, that's not true because AIDS is deadly. So, and you would assume that you go into shock immediately. You're traumatized, but it doesn't happen. It's like if a doctor, for example, tells you have cancer stage 4 and it has already spread and you have like 2 months, usually you don't go into shock immediately. It takes time for that to sink in, and especially if you're young, you don't expect that. And so it took 2 weeks for it to really sink in to my subconscious. Like, my subconscious said to me 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. So that's not true, that's not true. That's what my subconscious was saying for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks that reached like my brain stem, and I began to physically shake like that. So if you think that you're such a macho man, that you get a death sentence and that doesn't faze you, then you're just mistaken. Yeah, that's being very, very, very unrealistic. Nobody is like that. So just as an example, that I wanted to tell that story. If you're dying and you're on your deathbed and you expect to die, you will be very, 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 very shaken to the core, to the innermost core of your being. And that's just true. That's the truth. Nobody is so macho that doesn't faze him. That's not realistic. So anyway, it's not called the Grim Reaper for nothing, because it's grim and it's darkness and despair, and it's not a good feeling. So I wanted to make this video just to emphasize how powerful your belief system affects you, how powerfully your belief system affects you, and that just by logic, if there is an objective truth in the material world, there is also an objective truth, a real truth in the spiritual world, which does exist, which is the world of energy. And if you're an atheist and you consider yourself a scientist, think about that. So think about that. That's Einstein's formula, simplified. What's more important, energy or mass? What has more gravity or more importance in the universe? Energy or the material? Must be energy, because there's way more energy in the universe. And if you leave the body, your body protects you from spiritual things. But if you leave your body, you're no longer protected. You feel everything. And everything you dished out, you will get back. Every unfair thing that you dished out to other people, you will experience them on your own spirit. And that hurts. That really hurts. And if you use a hammer and you hit your finger hurts. So as long as you're in the body, it's localized pain. But as soon as you're out of the body, it's everywhere. It hurts everywhere. So the body in a way protects you from experiencing pain. Also, there are so many misconceptions about oversimplifications about faith. Faith is for weak people, for example. That's not true. It's really smart to do that. If you want to survive, that is. If you don't, then just ignore it. If you want to survive and thrive, you better have a belief system. Even if it's Hinduism, it's more expedient than atheism. It's more goal-oriented than atheism. If you're an atheist, you're just running in circles. So I wanted to read the chapter 6 of Matthew. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust does corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. But if thine eye be darkness, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And Jesus is the light. It's not Muhammad. It's not theosophy. It's not the occult. It's not Aleister Crowley. Although I once considered the occult to be a way out, and meditation and all that stuff, and I did it like I did drugs. I was obsessed with it. So I did it like a maniac. I meditated 1.5 hours a day for about 3 years. And I'm trying my best not to exaggerate. I think it was more than 3 years. But at least that. So I achieved a Kundalini awakening, which was the most stupid thing I ever did. But I was convinced that this will heal me supernaturally. So you can be so deceived in your spiritual beliefs that knowing the Bible is not easy. It's a lot of information, and it took me a long time to just understand what the Holy Spirit means. So the Holy Spirit represents the mind of Christ, which he manifested by willingly sacrificing himself. Try to find that out. It's not easy. And what will change you is the Holy Spirit. Not praying to Jesus, not praying to God necessarily. It's the Holy Spirit working in you. Try to find that out. It's also pretty crucial information. So, over a period of 6 years, I came to that knowledge, and I invested a lot of time just listening to preachers that I deemed not to be hypocrites, like prosperity gospel preachers. And yeah, Derek Prince is a great preacher, in my opinion. I don't know much. I just can only speak from my point of view. And yeah, Hinduism will not save you. Chanting mantras will not save you. Using affirmations will not save you. Practicing meditation will maybe calm your mind, but that's also just an escape. It won't save you. Jesus will save you. He can do that. And then when this light manifests, your eyes open and you see the world with completely different eyes. And then you see how deep the deception really is. And that's why so many people can't even wrap their head around that 9/11 maybe could have been staged. That's way too much for people. So also, the more I see, the more I have to use Bible verses to describe reality, because it's the best description. Like when I was very much into researching conspiracy theories, like the Clintons and the crimes of the Clintons, and there's a very great documentary on that with just the names of people that mysteriously died. It's like the intro of Star Wars, goes on and on forever. And yeah, and really I can just think about Ephesians 6:12, which speaks about I maybe I don't know it exactly, so I read it to you. So I researched the crimes of the Clintons and the Bushes. Prescott Bush, for example, who funded the Nazi party with money, which supposedly he was indicted for in America. That was the grandfather of George Bush and his name was Prescott Bush. He was also in Skull and Bones. They were all in Skull and Bones. So that's pretty unsettling. And so he was indicted after World War II for the Trading with the Enemy Act, which back then completely swept me off my feet. Ephesians. Yeah, and so 11. The Acts of the Apostles. The Acts of the Apostles. Where are the Ephesians? Oh, I'm getting there. Ephesians. So that's the thing that I can just I stopped doing that because it doesn't lead anywhere. Researching conspiracy theories, and I was obsessed with that too. But it brings you in a bad state, and it's best you just accept that the world is evil and leave it at that. And so Ephesians chapter 6. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So there was obviously always spiritual wickedness in high places. And Hillary Clinton is pretty interesting. I'll leave it at that. Also the Epstein story, and that he had an Egyptian temple on his island, is also pretty interesting. But it just constantly confirms what's in that book. So often I have to use Bible verses because it's just the best description of the truth. And yeah. Also, what's unbelievable for me is now that 6 years have gone by, I was able to stop taking medications, just discontinue taking them, which usually many people never come off of that. Things like Valium, Clonopin, Rohypnol, these kinds of medications, and I just discontinued taking them. And all that happened is that I couldn't sleep for a night. And I did that before, and I had uncontrollable crying fits. I had uncontrollable crying fits. I couldn't stop crying. That's what these medications do to you. Real healing does not come from chemicals. It only comes by the Holy Spirit. The divinity inside of you is the real healer. And that has been known for thousands of years. Also, an interesting trivia fact is that the Hippocratic Oath that the doctors used to swear, it was changed 2 or 3 times. But the original oath begins with the words, "I swear by Apollyon the healer." Now, if you look in the Bible, who is Apollyon? Somewhere in the book, I don't really know exactly where, but it says the king over Hades is called in the Greek tongue Abaddon, and in the Hebrew tongue Apollyon, or vice versa, I'm not sure. I think in the Hebrew he is called Abaddon, and in the Greek tongue Apollyon. So I swear by Apollyon the healer. That's the beginning of the Hippocratic Oath. Thanks for listening.